Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mrs. Barbara N. Klein. For those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off. We welcome those of you who are online. Officiating this afternoon is Rabbi Tzvi Engel from Congregation Or Torah.
As is our tradition, we'll begin with the recitation of some chapters from the Psalms from Tehillim, and then we'll hear the Eshes Chayil read. So first call on grandson Yoni to come forward to please read Kapitel Tetvav and Chaf Gimel, and then David will lead us in the Eshes Chayil recitation.
Mizmor David Adonai Mia Gorba Laka Mish Kon Bahar Kadshecha Holech Tamim Upoel Tzedek V'dover Emes Bilvavo Lo Ragal Al Lishono Lo Asal Reyehu Ra'a V'cherpa Lo Nasa Al Karovo Nivze Be'einav Nimas Ve'es Yirei Adonai Yekabed Nishpal Ara Lo Yamir Kaspo Lo Nasan B'neshech V'shochad Al Naki Lo Lakach Osei Ele Lo Yimot Le'olam Mizmor David Adonai Roi Lo Aksar Pino Seshe Yarbatzeni Alme Menuchos Yina Aleni Nafshi Yeshove V'yancheni B'maglei Tzedek L'man Shemo Gam Ki Elech V'getzal Mabes Lo Ira Raki Ata Imadi Shiftecha Mishantecha Hema Yinachamuni Taroch Lefanai Shulchan Neged Torai Dishanta B'Shemen Roshi Kosi Revaya Achto B'Chesed Yirtafuni Kol Yimei Chayai B'Shavti V'Beis Adonai Leorech Yamim.
Eshes Chayil Miyimtza V'Rachok Mipini Michra Batach Ba'alev Ba'ala V'Shalav Lo Yechsar Gemalasu Tov Lo Ra Kol Yemei Chayaha Darshar Tzimeh Ufishtin V'Tas B'Chefetz Kapeha Haisakaniot Socher Mimerchak Tavi Lachma V'Takam Ba'od Laila V'Titen Teref Leveisa L'Chok Menorah Zama Sadeh V'Tikachehu Mipri Chapeha Matakarem Chagrabos Masneha Vatamitz Zoroseha Tamaki Tov Sachra Lo Yichbe Balayla Neira Yadecha Shilchor Vakishor V'Chapeha Tam Chufalech Kapra Parsela Ani V'Yadeha Shilchol Evyon L'Sira Levesa Mishaleg Kichol Besa Levushanim Marvadim Asasala V'Shesh V'Argaman Levusha No de Basharim Bala Beshifto Im Ziknei Aretz Sadin Asasa V'Tim Kor V'Chagor Nasna L'Chanani Oz V'Hadar Levusha V'Tizchak L'Yom Acharon Piha Pascha B'Chachma V'Soros Chesed Alashona Sophia Halichos Besa V'Lechem Atzus Lo Sochel Kamu Vaneha V'Yashua Bala V'Halala Rabos Banus Asu Chayil V'At Alis Al Kulana Sheker hachein v'hevel hayofi isha yiras Adonai his halal tenula mipri yadeha v'haluha b'sharim ma'aseha.
We live in the strangest of times. Here we're saying goodbye to a woman who is a matriarch of a family, and the room has very few people in it physically. So many people are watching via Zoom. And yet, the first words of hesped, of eulogy, have to be always, under all circumstances, words that herald from our tradition. I mentioned last night that the tradition to read from the book of Psalms is, of course, an ancient one. It relates to the fact that this is our Sefer, our book of Tehillim. This is the Siddur of the Jewish people. But that it's followed up by the words spoken at the first Jewish funeral for Sara Imenu, the matriarch of the Jewish people. And those words were spoken by Avram Avinu. So says the Medrash Tanchuma and Parshat Chayei Sarah. Even though we're not able to have many people here as a Kavod Achron in person, of course there are many people, as we'll soon hear, who owe a great debt of gratitude and who feel a deep sense of loss today as we pay our last respects, our Kavod Achron, to Barbara Klein, Bracha Necha Bat Shmuel. I'd like to ask our son to kindly come forward, Jordan, to offer Mila de Hespeda, words of Hesped this morning. Take your time, because there's a delay with Zoom. Okay.
Where do I even begin to speak about my mother, Bracha Necha Bat Shmuel? I have, of course, known my mother my entire life, and I've always appreciated her wonderful qualities. But as I matured to adulthood and gained some perspective that comes with age, and as I became a husband, father, and grandfather, I began to truly appreciate her strength, compassion, and giving nature. Whenever Mom would comment to me how well she believed my sisters and I turned out, I would always comment that the apples do not fall far from the tree, and she would always make some self-deprecating comment in reply. Halavai, the apples should merit even to land in the same orchard as the tree, much less fall close to the tree. Mom had a number of interests that kept her sharp and, when needed, entertained. She was an avid reader, in particular loving Agatha Christie and other mystery novels and Jane Austen books. Her favorite book and movie was Pride and Prejudice. Mom loved doing crossword puzzles. If you wanted to do one with her and keep up, you better have peeked ahead or brought the answer key with you. She loved old movies, and she and Dad loved to go see musicals at the Marriott Lincolnshire Theater. In earlier days, Mom and Dad had a regular bridge game with friends. Mom, like most of the members of our family, was a trivia buff. And for as long and far back as I can remember, she had a weekly mahjong game. What set Mom apart, however, was not her varied interests, but who she was as a person. Mom had a very keen sense for understanding and respecting other people's feelings and of fairness and even-handedness. When we were in a public setting, she would frequently ask me if I remembered to say hello to so-and-so, even as an adult, and often as I was about to do so. That was not because she was concerned that so-and-so would think badly of me or of her parenting skills. That was because she did not want so-and-so to feel slighted or ignored in any way. Mom went to great lengths to treat her children equally and her grandchildren equally. If she spent a few dollars more on a Hanukkah present for one grandchild, she would always make sure to put a few dollars in the card of the other grandchild, out of concern that perhaps one of them would feel bad. When my sisters and I were young, an elderly and not so politically correct great uncle gave me, you knew this story was coming, gave me $10 for Hanukkah, Stacy $5, and Elena $1. My parents made me give some of my gift to my sisters and even it out. That may be the one bit of parenting done by my parents that I did not approve. If Mom heard that a relative or friend or acquaintance was sick, she always called to check on them and to see if they needed something. And it was done with a great knack for knowing when was the right time to call and how best to deliver the message. Mom gave wonderful advice to her children, in-law children, and grandchildren over the years, but she never pushed it on us. She offered it when we asked for it or when we otherwise signaled to her that we welcomed it. Mom was a unique mixture of softness and toughness. Anybody who knew her recognized her sweetness, but when life presented her with challenges, she faced them with a will of steel. Among the challenges that my mother faced were health challenges. She survived 3 cancers, 2 of which quite serious. When she was 56, she was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We later found out that when diagnosed, the doctors gave her maybe a 30% chance of surviving it. She had radiation and chemotherapy, and when she was informed on Tisha B'Av that the cancer had come back, she had a bone marrow transplant. The illness and treatments put her through incredible suffering, but she persevered, only rarely expressing self-pity, and she beat the cancer. A number of years later, she battled breast cancer and won the fight. Then, a few years ago, she was diagnosed again with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was not a recurrence of the original lymphoma. It was lightning striking twice. Of course, at this time, Mom was a lot older and had an arrhythmia and neuropathy. But again, she fought and she persevered and beat that cancer as well with hardly a complaint. But the doctors believed that the full body radiation that Mom had to battle her first cancer, that awful and harsh but totally necessary treatment that gave her and us with her an additional 25 years, finally got the better of her. It gave her a condition called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which hardened the membranes of her lungs and made it very difficult for her to breathe and then to eat and drink, wearing down her body until she was taken from us yesterday. But even at the end, she showed her steel will and determination. The doctors told us there was no cure for this progressive disease, but it might be slowed a bit, and we could improve her quality of life if we could get her to eat and drink more, and so we tried. And my mother, who could barely speak at this point, tried her best to eat or drink a bit of what we offered. I have no doubt that she did not have a desire to eat and drink, but she saw how desperate we were to have her do it. So she tried mightily to eat and drink as a chesed to us. Stacy, Elena, and I, and our spouses and children, learned from Mom, at least in some small measure, how to be strong. And unfortunately, we have needed it, as both of my sisters have been battling breast cancer these past 2 years. May they both have a refuah shlema. My parents had a wonderful, supportive, and unfortunately shrinking close group of friends. The Mussmans, the Bernsteins, the Seppins, Monica Bauman, my mother's mahjong friends, my father's poker buddies, and many others over the years too numerous to mention. Mom always dressed nicely and was well groomed, but she did not want fancy clothes or jewelry or a fancy car. Those were not important to her. My mother was a giver, not a taker. And while many people benefited from her giving nature, the primary beneficiaries were her family. What was most important to her was family. My mother's parents, Grandpa Sam and Grandma Anna, passed when I was young, so I did not merit to see firsthand my mother's relationship with them, but I know that she was close with them and helped nurse them through their final illnesses. My mother and her sister Estelle, Zichrona Livracha, who predeceased my mother, were very close. My mother and her sister Toby, who survived my mother, were also very close. My Aunt Toby and Uncle Shelley moved to New York many years ago, and so most of our summer family vacations were to New York, or at least involved a stop in New York. We did not mind, as we always had a good time. Mom and my Aunt Toby spoke to each other almost every day by phone, sharing wonderful family news as well as challenges. I know that it is very hard on my Aunt Toby that she is not able to be here today because of COVID. At least she and my mother were able to FaceTime for a bit the day before my mother passed, so Aunt Toby could see her once more. I know Aunt Toby knows it, but I would be remiss if I did not mention how much my mother loved her and how important and integral she was. to all aspects of my mother's life. Mom had a very close and loving relationship with her nieces and nephews, my cousins Bruce and Judy, David and Barb, Sari and Billy, Scott and Angela, and Denise and Stephen. She kept in close contact with them all, and they checked in with her regularly. She loved them all like children, almost. Even though he would not want me to do this, I need to say a few words about my cousin David Slivnik. David, in addition to being my mother's nephew, was, along with his partner Mike Cochran, my mother's oncologist through all of her cancer treatments and her final illness. I know that I speak for my father and my sisters as well when I say that there are no words, literally no words, to describe the caring, loving, expert, and professional way that he treated not just my mother, but the entire family during her many years of health ordeals. He was always available, and he knew just what to say and to advise. In particular, during my mom's last illness, where in the end she deteriorated so fast, he gave us just the right amount of hope while preparing us for the inevitable. Mom loved her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Let me repeat that to make sure you hear the emphasis. Mom loved her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they had an incredible role model in Mom. Mom never tired of hearing about their exploits, great and small, seeing pictures and videos, reveling in their accomplishments, and sharing simchas with them. She acknowledged all birthdays and anniversaries, never failing to send a homemade birthday card, or once she retired and did not have access to her work computer, birthday cards from the dollar store. Now, Mom was not cheap. She just did not believe in spending money unnecessarily, like spending $10 on a folded color piece of cardboard. Her grandchildren, Tali, Avigail, Shay, Shira, Akiva, Yoni, Ayelet, Dovi, Zahava, Meira, and Ryan, and their wonderful spouses, all loved her very much, and she loved them all at least that much. Also, most, but not all, given COVID and geographic considerations, of her great-grandchildren, Ovadia, Michal, Gaili, Hananya, Chayla, Tzipora, Chili, Baruch Aryeh, Nechama, Adina, and Dasi had the zechus to know her, even if for so brief a time. The last full smile I got from Mom the day before she passed was when I showed her a picture, a video actually, of her youngest great-grandchild, Dasi, starting to crawl. Mom loved my sisters, Stacy and Elena, and me completely and unconditionally. She was always there with support, encouragement, and if we wanted it, good advice. She was our mom. She took care of us, comforted us, loved us, gave us generally of her time, efforts, cooking, attention, and so much more. She taught us what it is to be a family and to always hold on to that, even if tempers occasionally flared. I only hope that we were able to give back to her a fraction of what she gave us. Acharon, Acharon Chaviv. She loved, respected, and cherished my father, and my father loved, respected, and cherished my mother. They taught us how to build and hold on to a long and loving relationship. They knew the perfect balance of sharing everything and yet having their own interests and giving each other a bit of space to pursue and enjoy them. And Dad was the most tender, attentive caregiver to my mother during her illnesses, including, of course, the last, while keeping his role as the rock on which the whole family can rely. Dad, Stacy, Elena, and I, David, Rob, and Sue, and your grandchildren will do our best to make you and Mom proud and to carry on. And to carry on Mom's legacy. And we are and will always be there for you. May Mom's memory, example, and legacy be a blessing for her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, for her other family members and friends, and for Klal Yisrael. And may HaKadosh Baruch Hu comfort us in our loss.
I was not zoche to know Bracha Necha Bat Shmuel, Barbara Klein, all that well during her life. I was zoche last night and now again today to hear beautiful portraits painted by family of her character and of her contribution, which of course does not conclude with her passing. I should like to share a few remarks this afternoon in her memory, and really to do no more than perhaps poorly regurgitate what Jordan just recited, because these are beautiful characteristics that ought to be remembered and carried forward. I'll give you some of my reflections, I suppose, in terms of what I assimilated both from today and from our conversation last night. Barbara had just turned 82. Her birthday was December the 3rd, 1938, born here in Chicago, a graduate of Roosevelt University. Her parents were immigrants from Minsk, but she already achieved, in the American sense of the term, achievement. Graduate from Roosevelt U and teaching 5th grade, Beidler School on the West Side. 30 years service at Beth Shalom in Northbrook, helping to advance the cause of the Jewish people through her administrative work. As Jordan noted and described so lovingly, she loved to play and to read, to go to plays, to experience them, go to New York to see plays there and also here, as was mentioned. But the image that David said was humbling to him, I wrote down the word humbling, was the way in which she worked on those crossword puzzles. The hand seemed not to stop. It was constantly in motion, figuring out one clue and then the next. An avid mind, person not only plays mahjong and bridge, but also who reads books. Hercule Poirot, as the great hero, Miss Marple, both in Agatha Christie mysteries, of course the characters in Sense and Sensibility and other of Austen's works. In all of these cases, there's a mystery and a puzzle that needs to be somehow unpacked. I was struck by the fact that even though she had so many health challenges in her lifetime, Jordan told me, Sue called me Friday, and I spoke with Jordan about us, and I think it reflects the sense of the family. This took us by surprise. It reminds me of the words from a forthcoming parsha when Yaakov Avinu would reflect, Va'ani bevoi mi padan meta alai Rachel. Here a patriarch feels they've returned, and the mysteries and puzzles have been solved, and the golden years are ahead still. And then suddenly, a puzzle, a surprise, a challenge. And a trip to Disney World, on the face of it, may sound nothing more than having a good time. But to me, there's a modeling going on that grandparents show their grandchildren. We need to have fun together. That when we go on vacation, the vacation is to take a trip to see family. And the notion of thinking about those ideas and working out the next level of the puzzle. This is the parsha that she passed away. It was yesterday. It was the parsha of Yaakov Avinu struggling in the dead of the night with an unnamed assailant. Vayomer lo ashlachacha ad ki im berachtani. I will not let you go, says Yaakov as he's holding on to his foe, who he has now bested. So this angel, this dark angel, says to him, Vayomer elav mashmacha. Vayomer Yaakov. He says back, my name is, what's your name? He says to him, my name is Yaakov. Vayomer lo Yaakov yamer od shimcha. Your name will no longer be called Yaakov, ki im Yisrael. You'll be called Yisrael, ki sarita im Elokim, v'im anashim vatuchal. You'll now be called Yisrael, for you have struggled with angelic forces, and you've struggled with people, and you have been successful. Why wasn't the name of Yaakov changed to the name Vatuchal, the victor? Instead, he got the name Yisrael, Visarita, one who struggles, one who grapples. Perhaps there's a modeling in that. The essence of struggle from watching others who go through terrible challenges is to see the way they model resiliency, the way in which they fight against very challenging odds. I was struck last night and again today, George just mentioning that a person could have stage 4 lymphoma at 56 years of age, which, of course, consider a young age, and then to have cancer 2 more times, to face such adversity. Elena quoted this quote on the pillow for me last night from Midsummer Night's Dream, though she be little, she be fierce. And as these events are happening, each of them is a teaching moment. Each of them gives insight. And of course, the notion of a couple whose love was forged around a baseball game and a Motzei Yom Kippur, married in the 4th of July, 1960, 60 years of marriage. This too was modeling. A couple that grows together in terms of its household, at a time when it was much less popular to keep a kosher home, to have Shabbat. Barbara took this on and built it. The favorite Yom Tov, how telling. It should be the favorite Yom Tov of Pesach, which Erin described to me last night. She always came into the holiday exhausted but happy. How could one not be happy when surrounded by the Achadasar Kuchvaya, the 11 stars from Yosef's dream, from this forthcoming week's Parsha? Mandel bread and apple cake may have been the standard fare on the table, delectables to be remembered. But all of those were not just about the way in which they would impact the taste, the tam, the sense of taste, and the olfactory nerve and its memories, but more the modeling of what it means to embody love in an expression through food. And the conveyance of love for family, that there should be this idea that while it was taken you all by surprise that she passed such as she did, was just after her birthday, which is a day always of celebration, but also a day of taking stock and assessment, that all the grandchildren should be zochem to speak with her, no doubt to receive brachas from her, to speak to her beloved sister, the nieces and nephews. The Yom Tov of Pesach is, of course, the holiday of the Jewish people's story, and it's the time of the modeling of how generations ought to continue, even after the earlier generations have left the world. In the Parsha yesterday, there is a great unsung hero of Jewish history. She seems, if you will, like a bit player upon the stage, and yet she has a tremendous impact. Vatamat Devora meineket Rivka, vatikaver mitachat lebeit el, tachat ha'alon, vayikra shmo alon bachut. Devora, who was the nursemaid of Rivka, passed away. She was buried just there in the proximity of Beit El, under a particular tree, and the tree was called Alon Bachut, the tree of weeping. Now, Devora We have no lines that she ever speaks on the stage. She doesn't seem to make a mark in any open manner. But clearly, she was a very important person in the family. Clearly, in her subtle way, she made a deep impact on them after all. She gets copy within the Torah. But listen to this idea of the Dad Zikinu Bali HaTosfot. It tells us the tree she was buried under. Bali Tosfot here on this pasuk note that when it says later on in Sefer Shoftim, in a later biblical book, about a great prophetess whose name was Devorah, it describes V'hi Yoshevet Tachat Tomer Devorah. Zehu Alon Bachut, Devorah Dehacha. Devorah, the prophetess, sat under, when she had people come ask her questions, people seeking guidance, she sat dafka under the same tree that was the tree under which Devorah, Meneket Rivka, was buried. Now, we didn't plan this in advance, but Jordan referenced the idea of the tree and falling from the tree and far from the tree and not far from the tree, maybe in the orchard. But the idea that Devorah, the prophetess, may not have been a blood relation per se to Devorah and Meneket Rivka, but she understood the legacy that a matriarch can hold. And so that confluence of being able to be at once in grief, but also to sit under the tree that represents that grief and to also carry the legacy forward. This is what the Bali Tosfot are describing here on this pasuk. Vayikrashmo alon bachut. Today, it feels like a tree of weeping, a family tree of weeping. But in the future, Tomer Devorah, it becomes the tree that is the tree under which a great legacy is born and carried forward. Today we remember her beloved parents, Samuel and Anna Turovitz, Zichronam Livracha, and her sister, Esther Slivnik, Zichronam Livracha. Lahavda ben Achaim ben Achaim extend our condolences, long distance, to Toby Alter, to her sister-in-law in Eretz Yisrael, Eliza Klein Berniker, very close with the family and so close with all of the family members who are in Eretz Yisrael, have gone to visit Eretz Yisrael, the 5 grandchildren presently living in Eretz Yisrael, 11 great-grandchildren and 11 grandchildren, as was mentioned. Ms. Sue and Jordan, and Stacy and David, Elena and Robert. Your role now is, in fact, of course, to carry forward this beautiful legacy. Luckily for you, your children were zochim to see the beautiful person that was your mother of blessed memory. Aaron, the patriarchs of Israel, unfortunately, sometimes suffer terrible losses. And they're wondering, why is this puzzle happening? How do I get out of this mystery? How could it be? Maybe one of Barbara's lessons is to work on those puzzles, to keep filling in the clues and keep going. Secondly, that sense of resiliency for a whole family, resiliency in fighting and struggling. And thirdly, the capacity to be a great giver to family, not only Bahai Alma in this world with all of that she contributed, but to carry that legacy forward in L'Dorei Dorot for future generations, following in a path of Torah and mitzvot. And I hadn't written this in my notes, but it only struck me just now. In case you were, maybe it just flows for everyone else. You think so obviously about it. Did I get it right? All the 11 great-grandchildren mysteriously all have Jewish names that they go by? Did I get that right? Or thereabouts? Yeah. So just look at the family tree. From Minsk to Chicago to different places that they live now, but carrying the name Yisrael, the Jewish name. Tehei nishmat etzura b'tzora chayim. Yehi zichra baruch, may her memory be a blessing. Bracha necha bat Shmuel. Umacha Hashem Elokim dimim al kol panim v'cherpat amo yasir me'al kol haaretz. Conclude now with the reading of the recitation of the Kelmole. I ask you please to rise. Hilmalei rachamim shochein b'meromim hamitzei menucha nechona על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר רקיע מזהירים, את נשמת ברכה נכה בת שמואל, שהלכה לעולמה, בעבור שאנחנו מתפללים בעד הזכרת נשמתה. בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה, לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרכים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment will continue at Waldheim Cemetery. And for those of you who are online, you can watch the burial via online in about an hour. So please check the link at about 1:30. For those of you who are here, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we'll have a car in the back of the funeral procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. And please use your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. For information about Shiva, for those of you who are online, please go to our website. All the information is there. And for those of you who are here, it's on the service folder. Memorial contributions in her memory to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society or the ARC. Once again, all that information is on our website. And for those of you who are here, you should know there are over 140 devices watching right now. So it's a lot of people. At this time, I ask everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort the casket of Mrs. Barbara N. Klein from the chapel. Then you may return to your cars. Ladies and gentlemen, this time we're going to continue with the interment, and we welcome back those of you who are online. People around, so
while the Aron is being lowered into the kever, we're going to tear Korea now, and as soon as they finish putting it, they're going to put the cover on. So I'm going to ask the Avelim to please rise, and Sue and David, if I can enlist your help over here. It's extremely sharp, so I'm on board. They so we'll do on the left side. Gordon wants to do it, and then Sue will do it, okay?
Wait.
No, hold on. Go from the
Wait,
edge.
I thought left side is here.
Yeah, left side for the kids, correct.
And Dad did right
He's
side.
gonna do the right side, correct. So left side, but it should be exactly from the edge of his shirt. So and just go in and a little bit down, so you can tear it down. With most, you open the button in a minute. Don't tear it yet, but in and down a little bit. Yeah. Exactly. Stop. Good. Just Jordan, open that button on your shirt if you can. Because when you tear, that will be a button after it. Just open the button. That's it. On the right side. Right. Also, between the spots, you can open the button. Are you tearing your jacket off?
I don't mind.
That's what I told you last night. You were
I don't tend to wear it.
Make it a little bit down. That's it. Stop. Okay, stop. Good. And it has to be from the edge. Yeah. Yeah. Or the left side. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, you might have to help a little bit more because it might be hard to. Yeah, that's just for warmth and it's underneath.
Yeah.
So no. That's fine. Yeah. So, thank you. So everyone, you grip it with your hand. Grip it with your hand. And we'll say the bracha together. Everyone will answer Amen. And even the people who are on Zoom can answer Amen, even though they're not here, but they're hearing the bracha. Okay, so you can, yeah. Okay. So we can say up in the front.
shovels? Add more would be good. Yeah, one or two more would be good. Thank you. Get more shovels. We'll do some space. Yeah. You do that? You move it up? Yeah. Go ahead. Step back. We're just gonna push this up front.
Truth is, I think it's over right there. You showed up. We have a right here. We have here. We're all here, right? Yeah. And then we'll go over there, and then we'll be cottage here and then church. That makes sense. You're gonna end up saying it's right here, and then you show up here. So, you know what I mean? We're all here. It's better. Nice.
We'll do mincha over there.
Yeah. Then we'll do a shura there. And we'll do mincha right there. We don't play too much with the time. Otherwise, you're gonna be rushed to come in, and you come back to the house. You're gonna do the dola, just the coast, and then you just wash. You sit. I mean, you walk before you go in the house.
Right.
Dola,
Right.
the coast. You sit there.
Wash before davening.
We have this water over there, so we'll try to do our best to do it. Truth is, not clear it's necessary, but the washing of the hands is really associated more with the going into a building. That door is especially for a certain extent of the time. They'll get the board. Yeah, put the, they'll do the board. Just to make it sure he's covered there. Okay.
Just like make it so it looks nice.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Thank you.
Go. Yeah, start. Yeah, and you have No, yeah, I wanted to. Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you. As our minhag, we'll now recite the Tziduk Hadin, the tefillah called Tziduk Hadin. You can find it on that. You have the cards, each of you. So I'd ask the Avelim, please, if you can, to rise. I'll say it with you just to help pace it. It's for the uninitiated. The Tziduk Hadin is a series of mostly psukim, of verses from the Bible, from the Torah, from the Nevi'im, and the Ksuvim. And it also includes some statements from the sages of blessed memory throughout the ages. And it's very much summarized by the penultimate line from the book of Eov. Hashem natan v'Hashem lakach. God has given and God has taken. Yehi Shem Hashem mevorach. May the name of God be blessed. And as the Chazal teaches at the beginning of the 9th chapter of Tractate Brachot, Masachet Brachot, Kshem Shem mevarchim ala tov, kach mevarchim ala ra. We Jews, we give blessings at times that are happy, and God forbid the opposite. We recognize Hashem's hand in the world, even if so often we're mystified by it and bewildered and feel a sense of loss. And so the opening section here now of the Tziduk Hadin and all the subsequent verses are really a continuation of that blessing that we recited a few minutes ago together, of the Dayan Ha'emes, that God is the God of, a judge of truth. Following the recitation of this prayer, we'll continue immediately thereafter with the Kaddish. I think everyone has the card. And so say the Avelim, we're going to be reciting Kaddish. We'll recite Kaddish. And you look at the yellow highlighted section. That's special for the burial. It's a little bit challenging to say. It's transliterated on the other side if it's easier. Again, for those who will be reciting Kaddish. Following the Kaddish, then will be the Shura. And then we're going to have Mincha just in the parking lot at the gates of the Beis Olam. So let's say together. Hatzur tamim pa'olo, ki chol derachav mishpat, El Emunah Ve'ein Avel Tzadik V'Yashar Hu. Hatzur Tamim B'chol Poal. Miyomar Lo Matif'al. Hashalit B'mata U'V'mal. Memit U'Mechaye Morid Sheol V'Ayal. Hatzur Tamim B'chol Ma'aseh. Miyomar Elav Ma Ta'aseh. Ha'omer Ve'oseh. Chesed Chinam Lanu Ta'aseh. U'vizchut Hane'ekad Keseh. Hakshiva Va'aseh. Tzadik B'chol Derachav Hatzur Tamim. Erech Apaim U'malei Rachamim. Chamol Na V'chusna Al Avot Uvanim. Kilcha Adon Haslichot V'harachamim. Tzadik Ata Adonai Lahamit Ulahachayot. Asher Biyadcha Pikdon Kol Ruchot. Chalila Lecha Zichronenu Limchot. V'yuna Einecha Berachim Eleinu Fekuchot. Kilcha Adon Harachamim V'haslichot. Adam Im Ben Shana Yiyeh. O 1000 Shanim Yichyeh. Ma Yitron Lo Kilo Haya Yiyeh. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet Memit U'Mechayeh. Baruch Hu Ki Emet Dino. U'Mishotet HaKol Be'eno. U'Mishalem L'Adam Cheshbono V'Dino. V'Hakol Lishmo Hodaya Yiteinu. Yadanu Adonai Ki Tzedek Mishpatecha. Titzdak B'Dovrecha V'Tizke B'Shoftecha. V'Ein Laharher Achar Midat Shoftecha. Tzadik Ata Adonai V'Yashar Mishpatecha. Dayan Emet Shofet Tzedek V'Emet. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet Shekol Mishpatav Tzedek V'Emet. Nefesh Kol Chai B'Yadecha Tzedek Mal'a Yemincha B'Yadecha. Rachem Al Pleitat Tzon Yadecha V'Tomar Lamalach Heref Yadecha. Gedol Ha'itza V'Rav Ha'aliliya Asher Einecha Fikuchot Al Kol Darchei B'nei Adam Latet Le'ish Kidrachav V'Chifri Malalav Lehagid Ki Yashar Adonai Tzuri V'Lo V'Latabo Adonai Natan V'Adonai Lakach Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach V'Hurachu Michaper Avon V'Le'ashchit V'Hirba Le'Hashiva Po V'Lo Ya'ir Kol Chamato.
Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabba. Amen. V'yalma dihu asi lihis chadasa u'liacha ya'a.
Messiah Sokol Chaye Olma Ulemevne Karta D'Yerushalayim Shachel Hechale Begava Ulemekar Pulchana Nuchra'a Me'ara Ula'atava Pulchana Dishmaya La'atra V'yamlich Kudsha Berichu B'malchute V'ikare V'chayechon Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabam V'rach Le'olam Umei Umayam. Amen.
Yehi Shlom Rabba Mishamaya. V'chaim Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Imromav V'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'Imru Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to ask everyone to help form the Shura, and the rabbi will lead everybody in the traditional words of consolation. Then we'll do, as the rabbi said, mincha over there. And for those of you who need water, please take a little box of water so you can wash your hands when you leave the cemetery. So if everyone other than the four mourners, please help form the Shura.
We'll do the shura, yeah. Just before I walk through the Shura, we turn one last time to the Kever, Bracha Necha Bat Shmuel, and we say, Lichi b'shalom, Tanuchi b'shalom, Ta'amod Goralech L'Ketz HaYamim. Go in peace, rest in peace, and arise to your destiny at the end of days. And now as you move through into the Shura, the focus shifts now to you as mourners. We wish you the traditional blessing of consolation. You're among the mourners of Tzion Yerushalayim. Hamakim Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar V'el Tzion Yerushalayim. Hamakim Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar V'el Tzion Yerushalayim. Hamakim Yenachem Etchem B'toch Sha'ar V'el Tzion Yerushalayim.